Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me. In my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. Been doing this since September 2013, making videos in this series. The book I want to look at today, a little different. I'm probably going to say the name wrong. Gershom Scholem, The Messianic Idea in Judaism, and other essays on Jewish spirituality. So before I begin, let's think about it for a minute. Spirituality. What do you believe? Do you believe in God? Do you believe you're a spiritual being? What if you're into witchcraft? And a lot of people are. What do you believe? What if you're into UFOlogy and aliens? Reptilians and gray aliens and avians and blues and talls and great whites and aliens, UFOs. What do you believe? Seriously. Some people believe the earth might be flat, concave. A lot of people believe what they've been taught. It's a sphere. It's rotating on its axis at 1,000 miles an hour. So if it's rotating 1,000 miles an hour, and we have 24 hours in a day, is the diameter of the Earth 24,000 miles. And it circles around the sun once a year. Apparently at a speed of 66,600 miles per hour. You can go online and get the formula for figuring out the radius of a circle, etc., by the distance from the center. I was surprised when I did that, and I came up with 66,600 miles an hour. So think about this. You got this sphere in space, 24,000 miles around, Earth, a good-sized planet, hurtling through space around the sun at 66.6 thousand miles an hour. That's pretty fast. Faster than a speeding bullet, I would imagine. And of course, in space, there are comets, debris. It surprises me that the Earth doesn't smash into a lot of that stuff. The Bible says we have a firmament. Supposedly, we have some kind of big dome over us. On top of that is water, and below it is water. So a lot of confusing things. Then we got this group of people pretty much controlling the world, taking over the world, called secret societies, Kabbalist, Zionism. All in cahoots. They've been working for years. The banksters, a lot of very evil people who have brought us World War I, World War II, 9/11, an assassination of presidents and people, the destructions of nations, and the slaughter of countless numbers of people, probably totaling over 1 billion last 1,000 years. And apparently they have plans for a global world order. Recently, some evidence has popped up, press releases and stuff like that, YouTube videos, books. But anyways, the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Religious Leadership Organization, has requested that the U.S. legislator, the government, maybe start enforcing or passing some legislation, laws, that make it illegal to talk about Jewish people or Zionism or boycott Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric talk. probably even writing books, magazines, making videos, make it a crime. And by the way, interestingly enough, since World War II, it's been a crime all over Europe, Switzerland, Germany, etc., etc. And we all know what's happened in the Middle East since 9/11 and other places all over the world, and the demonization of Iran again and again and again, and even now Venezuela. Why Venezuela? Why Iran? I can give you good reasons. Venezuela has a huge mineral resource, probably one of the largest gold resource countries in the world, certainly high up there with oil. And since President Chavez nationalized it, it isn't controllable to be milked for all the wealth that can be taken out of that country by the elites. These people that are into the secret societies and organizations like the Council of Foreign Relations, all these non-elected entities who are controlling our world, the huge corporations who pretty much with their money control the politicians. And so they're answerable to the politicians, and the politicians are answerable to them. They're working together. And apparently the banksters, which are the Illuminati, Freemason societies, and Rosicrucians and other ones, are working towards this messianic goal of some kind of Messiah to come back to Earth, or come to Earth. And I don't know if necessarily come back. The last Messiah that came, of course, was Jesus Christ, and he was rejected and killed, crucified, hanged, whatever you want to say. So for 2,000 years, apparently, the Jews have been without a homeland. And they didn't have to be. They were welcomed in many countries all over the world in the past couple thousand years. But apparently, according to their Messianic religious beliefs and their ritual religious practices, they alienated themselves from the peoples in the countries they lived. So I thought I would read from this book, but I want to say something before I do. And that I realize these kinds of conversations may seem complex, may seem beyond your reach of understanding. And I would totally disagree with that. I think even Einstein said the simplest answer is probably the right answer. So when you talk about Messianic, waiting on a Messiah, and you know that there's a lot of accusations and a lot of evidence of Satanism and decadency and perversions, and these leaders belonging to these secret societies and organizations doing everything they can to keep stuff from the rest of us, plus continue again and again and again to take our wealth, our savings, and the things that families build up, and destroy nations and take all of their wealths, unmercifully just slaughtering people all over the planet. You know, you can't help but think for a moment, if you're a sober attitude and clear thinking, you've got to say, these are some evil people. Anybody who thinks that this kind of research is a pleasure would have to be kind of crazy. It's not. It's a very serious endeavor to try to figure out WTH, what the heck is going on. I'll just look at a couple of pictures here, for example. Katy Perry. In some of these events these people put on, the rituals are clearly satanic, with the fires and the all-seeing eyes and the demons with horns, with Madonna and Beyonce and Lady Gaga and Katy Perry, and other organizations with people with these hoods and stuff like this. It's just plain out weird, I believe. And the obelisk, George Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., does it have a significance like a cross does on a Christian church? And I say it does have a significance. It is part of this religion. And here we have the Messianic Memorial, the George Washington, read the bottom of it, Masonic Memorial. And the Masons are a Messianic organization. Here's a Masonic symbol with the Phoenix rising. Do you know what the story of the Phoenix rising is? Is when they want to rebuild a new world, the old world has to rise up and explode in a burst of flames. And then the new Phoenix can be reborn. You see the picture? With the big Masonic symbols? And of course, there's a lot of stuff in the news. Even Israel calling on the leaders of Russia and the United States to help rebuild King Solomon's temple again. Part of what we're going to talk about here. The Messianic Idea in Judaism. And other essays on Jewish spirituality. Series 259. So I've showed a lot of videos. If you watched my picture shows, you've seen some of these symbols. But here's a six-pointed star like on the Israeli flag, with apparently earth in the center of this thing. What does this stuff mean? And remember, usually the simplest answer is the correct one. Here you have an owl, and you got buildings. The Trust Bank building in Texas. Doesn't the top of that building look like an owl? And of course, on the front of the dollar bill, if you can see it, which you probably can't, perched on this little one in the center of this video, can you see it? There's an owl. And a lot of people doing the all-seeing eye symbol. And the crown, intelligence, and even Washington, D.C., a giant owl in the street plan. You see the owl? That would be the demon god Moloch. Apparently, you have to sacrifice people to this demon god Moloch. You can look on your dollar bill and see the owl. Masonic organizations with the owl. Moloch. You can find these pictures on YouTube, on Yahoo image site, excuse me, and just look up Moloch. You'll see the pictures and you can click the links and get the scoop. The all-seeing eye on the back of the dollar bill. Apparently reptilian in nature. And apparently, when the Jews were delivered from Egypt captivity, and Moses went up to the top of the mountain to get the Ten Commandments from God, the Jews gathered together all their gold and built a cow, a golden calf like this. That's another representation of Moloch. And we're having a drunken orgy celebration or something like that. And when Moses came down to the mountain, he was so mad he smashed the tablets, that they would revert back to the ancient Moloch religion of Egypt. And after Sandy Hook shooting, this reporter shows us a Moloch on TV. Excuse me, an owl, but an owl is Moloch. Do you think they were telling us who's behind it? like the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill and the little owl and the tops of buildings looking like owls. So there's plenty of evidence in these pictures. Here's somebody speaking, Johnny Manziel on Manning Academy. He's got a little owl on his shirt, jacket. Katy Perry again. Egyptian hieroglyphics, all-seeing eye. Biblical Revelation, the dark horse. Katy Perry carrying a scepter. Is somebody trying to tell us something? Or is there some ancient religion we should know about? With these Emmys and Grammys and Super Bowl halftime rituals? All-seeing eye on the dollar bill. All-seeing eye in this picture. The colors of the rainbow. LGBT organization. You suppose this stuff is related? Got some kind of devil character here, Egyptian character. Apparently a sexual hieroglyphic. And this other character behind them with a bird head. Hooters uses the owl. The building there looks like an owl. So do the pictures tell us anything? I just randomly picked these up. I could have picked up any one of a dozen stacks of pictures on my desk, and we would have had similar discussions. They have something called a Merkaba. It's two inverted pyramids like this, and apparently you can also call it a star tetrahedron. But apparently if you spin it around, you can enter into a trance, and you can enter into another dimension with your spiritual self. Moloch. Apparently there's an all-seeing eye on his chest there. What do you suppose he's pleading for? Here's a Masonic temple with a six-pointed star on the top. Does anybody want to really try to convince me that these Masonic folks who are building models of King Solomon's temple and using the six-pointed star of Moloch, that it isn't all connected? Of Rephaim, the fallen angel, that it isn't all connected? You can see the six-pointed star here, the black one and the one in the background inverted. Rainbow colors, all-seeing eye. Again, another one. See the eye in the middle? Six-pointed star? So what is it to this magic, witchcraft, sorcery, Kabbalah? What is there we should know with the Hebrew letters? Apparently different kinds of names of God that give them certain powers. Merkaba, mysticism. What is it telling you? Understanding Jewish mysticism. Is there something we should understand? Chemtrails in the background, dumping chemicals in the sky, poisoning us every day. All the way back to George Washington's time, these symbols exist, and before. All right, so there is something to this Messianic religion with these interesting characters who have so many secrets and use all these symbols. And again, I say it's not that difficult to understand. And maybe I can help you understand by reading from this book on this video. The Messianic Idea in Judaism. Apparently the peoples, and not all Jewish peoples, but the ones that are part of it, the elite into also the secret societies, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, Council of Foreign Relations, Kabbalah, Illuminati, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columba, Club of Rome, so many organizations controlling our world militaries and intelligence agencies and world leaders and governments, and apparently the medical facilities around the world and education administrations, economic situation we're in. They control everything. Stock market, the oil, the food resources, the quality of our air, dumping chemicals, and the quality of our air with all the microwave transmissions. It really does seem like we're under attack by these people who want to destroy Christianity. And I don't say that lightly. I've been doing a lot of research. This is series 259. So I've done book reviews on 259 different authors. Some of those authors have more than one book. So well over 300 books, closing in on 700 videos on YouTube. Many of them 2 hours, so probably over 1,000 hours of video material on YouTube since 2013 September. And I started reading books in 2005, promising myself I wasn't qualified to write a book, never mind make videos, until I had read books for 10 years or so. That was a deal I made with myself. And I did research every day, press releases, making comments on press releases, watching videos, buying magazines, reading them, and books and so much, almost every day, every month, every year since 2005. I made it my main focus to try to figure out WTH. What did I know? I was like everybody else. I was living my life. Luckily for me, I lived on the coast in Florida. I had a big sailboat. I had a house by the beach with a swimming pool. I had a motorcycle. I had another house over north of Orlando on the St. Johns River, and a power boat, and 55 acres of land I had purchased in Maine, and some money in stocks and bonds. I had worked for 30, 40 years and tried to be smart with my money. I'd worked at a major aerospace company for 10 years. I have an electronic technology degree. When I got laid off days before Christmas, I went into business for myself. I've owned my own business, I guess this year or next year, for 30 years. Anyway, so I had that wealth, maybe plus or minus about $500,000 worth of stuff. And since I spent the last 15 years doing research, my net worth now is nothing. I had to use it to finance myself for the past 15 years. And I do scratch my head sometimes and go, man, did I do the right thing? And then I see the way the world is turning out, and I'm okay with the decision I made. Something was wrong. That's when I woke up and noticed they were dumping chemicals in the sky. I had gone down to Costa Rica on a big zero birthday and learned a lot, met some people from all over the world. I was the only American sitting at a tiki bar in Jaco Beach on the Pacific Ocean. And they told me a lot of things, including feeling sorry for we American citizens because we were oblivious to what was going on all over the world. I thought we were just stupid. And I think our newspapers and TV and the education system and the politicians, they're all deceiving us and giving us fake news, and we don't know what's going on in the world. We don't know the real reason they want to destroy Iran. We don't know the real reason why they pulled off 9/11 and destroyed all those countries and bombed all those people in the Middle East. And countries all over the world, all over Africa, all over Asia throughout the last 100 years. It's been insane. All in pursuit of this Messianic religion and demonizing Christianity, which they admitted during the congressional hearings in the 1920s concerning the communist infiltration of America. Did you know that? So with that said, before I read from the book, I'll just play a short clip that might tie some of this together. I've got a book here I've been going over. Gershom Scholem, probably saying his name wrong. The Messianic Idea in Judaism, and other essays on Jewish spirituality. So, a quick synopsis. More than 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people were praying for a Messiah. It was prophesied that a Messiah, a Savior, would come, a God, a deity from the spiritual world. Does that make sense? Anyways, Jesus showed up. We all know about Christianity. But they rejected Jesus because he was preaching that we are to love one another. Now think about that. That's why he was rejected. Anyways, 2,000 years later, here we are, and they're expecting the Messiah again. But the kind of a Messiah they expected then, and the kind of Messiah they expect now, is a warrior, king, destroyer, Messiah who will destroy all of these people controlling the Jewish nation of Israel, Zionism, Illuminati, Kabbalah, not all Jewish people. Everybody else that's their enemies will be destroyed or enslaved. Messianism. So I thought I'd look at some pictures. And yes, you can go on Yahoo image site and just put Messianism and see these pictures. And maybe pictures do speak 1,000 words. So you got this being with angels. I guess you could call it a Messiah. Probably Rephaim, the fallen angel. And he's got a sword in his hand, and he's stepping on this man here who's squirting blood up into the air. Looks like a little demon right here. Messianism. So they're expecting a Messiah to have all of their enemies destroyed, killed, or enslaved. Messianism, secrecy and mysticism. Mysticism, of course, is Kabbalah, alchemy, i.e. sorcery, witchcraft. Messianism against Christology. It is an anti-Christian focus. Jewish Messianism, Messiah return, justice, peace, restoration of God's people. The king, the warrior king, destroy all of Israel's enemies. Revolution, dictatorship, Marxism, Messianism. Classless society. Get it? Justice, peace. Are you buying it? Stalinist confessions. After World War I, an espionage event, they sent a bunch of spies and guerrilla warfare fighters into Russia. I'm sure nobody saw it coming. Sneak attack. Abducted the Tsar and his family, executed him. Had troops from other countries policing all the railway stations and every place else. And over the next 10 to 15 years, they liquidated, some say, 100 million Russians, Christians and other good people, not Jewish people, and destroyed the Christian churches after World War I. Messianism. Six-pointed star, Messianism, Zionism, and Jewish religions. Radicalism. Those who contend with the Lord will be shattered. Against them he will thunder in the heavens. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king, and will exalt the horn of his anointed. Messianic text. Think this is serious? Here's a guy flying with wings and his cell phone rings. God is not available. Violence and Messianism. Jewish philosophy and the great conflicts of the 20th century. Are people really awake? Do they understand what is going on? The attack on we the people? A 100 million people killed in Russia after World War I. Not during. They denied Jesus Christ. They want a Messiah that's going to help them conquer the world. Prophecy says an Antichrist will come. Yahoo image site. German Expressionism and the Messianism of a generation. Just saying, somewhere along the way, we the people need to wake up. Messianism, apocalypse, and redemption. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. What do you suppose this picture means? Click the link on these pictures and you get the details. That looks like a alien picture here. Prepare yourself. Oh my. I am here, it says under this picture. The Shia authorities correctly identified Messianic beliefs with beastism, or the desire to wage racial holy war for Jewish interest. Oh my. So much to learn. What's it going to take to wake people up? The Scepter of the Star. Messianism in Light of the Dead Sea Scrolls. John Collins. Kabbalah, alchemy, sorcery, witchcraft. The ancient hope, Aliyah. Aliyah is when all the Jewish people return from all over the world, which has been happening for the past 100 years. I've showed pictures of Aliyah. You can see here, Aliyah. Go look it up on Yahoo image site and see all the pictures. They control our politicians. They control our governments. They control the banking system. And they have plans. All right, the chapter I'm going to read from is on page 176. The neutralization of the Messianic element in early Hasidism. So Hasidism would be a particular religious group of Jewish people. Hasidism, Hasidic. And their neutralization of the Messianic element in early Hasidism. So the different groups of Jewish people, like in the Christian religion, you have the Catholics and the Baptists and the Protestant and the Lutherans and etc., etc. Different variations in their beliefs. Some of them extreme. Protestants, whatever. And some of the Christian religions, organizations have been fighting each other. Quite terrible for a long time. Well, the same thing exists in the Jewish religions. Did you know that? There are Jewish people who are completely opposed to this Zionist pursuit of a global world order by Jewish people who are apparently into the Kabbalah. And many Kabbalists have been accused of sorcery, witchcraft. So you have the God-fearing Orthodox Jewish people opposed to the reformed Kabbalistic witchcraft Jewish people. The good people against the evil people. Here in the United States, of course, we have the Christians, and we have a lot of New Age witchcraft organizations. Not that all people into the New Age understand what they're doing or think evil or anything like that. But they do think that Christianity is outdated, a lot of them, not all of them, and that it's actually a hateful organization because it's not accepting of transgenderism and homosexual marriage and all those things banned in the Bible. So you got this good versus the not so good, according to the biblical teachings, what's right and wrong. So in the Jewish world, you have the good and you have the bad. In the Christian world, you have the good and the bad. And I suppose that probably goes hand in hand with the Arab peoples, and are all not Muslims or Islamic. Some of the Arabs are atheists, some of them are Christian, some of them are Buddhist, some of them are Hindu. It's the same thing in Asia. Japan had a huge Christian population prior to being bombed in World War II. They bombed one of the Christian cities. Did you know that? A nuclear bomb on a Christian city. Apparently that was intentional. Part of this world battle. So the neutralization of the Messianic element in early Hasidism. And so to make the story short, 2,000 years ago, the prophet said a savior was coming from the spiritual world. And we're all spiritual beings in these biological bodies. We're born, we live, and we die, and we return to the spirit world. If you don't want to believe that, that's your prerogative. But most people believe that, and there seems to be plenty of evidence to support that. So the spiritual world seems to be the real world. This is the created world that we're here temporarily. Apparently, in the spiritual world, in the Bible, for example, it says God kicked out, however you want to say it, cast out a third of the angels from heaven. Apparently, even in the spiritual world, there was a revolution or a rebellion. An action had to be taken, and a third of the angels were cast out. Okay, where did they go? And they're spiritual beings. So there are different versions to these stories of the creation of humans. Some people will say it's Zachariah Stitchens and the Anunnaki aliens creating humans with some of their DNA. And some people will say that it's the Palladians or other types of aliens. And of course, some people will try to convince people that it's all evolution. We came from monkeys. But there's something wrong with coming from monkeys, because a lot of people are aware, there's plenty of stories all over the planet, that there was a great flood, intentional, planned for, to destroy apparently some genetically created hybrid humans, DNA with other kinds of animals and mythology and monsters. And I guess it was pretty ugly to have to create a great flood all over the planet to kill off all of the life except for remnants of people all over the world. Did you know that? Even the Hopi Indians have their stories, and the Mayans and the Ecuadorians and Romania, all over the world there are stories of some beings helping some human go underground or in a mountain, or Noah building an ark to survive the Great Flood. And prior to the Great Flood, there were vast civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria and so much more. So how do you account for evolution when there was an advanced civilization prior to the Great Flood? And all the knowledge was lost and we had to start all over again. But all the knowledge was not lost. Certain peoples or groups, I guess, existed on the planet, maybe in the Himalayan mountains, etc., and other places in the earth, Shambhala, whatever, and we're kind of controlling the puppet strings on the planet. That seems like a likely scenario, and apparently they're not very good people, or whatever kind of beings they might be. They've been pulling the strings using the secret societies to manipulate our societies like a huge chess game. And apparently there is cosmic battle going on between those entities and the forces from heaven where God is, and the place where the angels were cast out from. Kind of complex, but it does have everything to do with where we are today. And again, going back to Einstein, it's usually the simplest answer is probably the easiest answer. So when I read from this book and what I've showed you so far, we can see there is a Messianic idea. They want a Messiah to come to help them with their goals, and particularly with the, not all Jewish people, but the people controlling the world right now, the Zionist Jewish people, along with the secret societies, the Illuminati, the Kabbalists, the sorcerers, the people into magic and witchcraft. They want to control the world and be the masters of the people. They want to enslave the people. So they're expecting a Messiah. And they expected it 2,000 years ago. Instead, they got Jesus, who preached love, who was rejected and crucified. That's where we are today. So prophecy said that at some point in time, that a Messiah would come, but this one would fulfill their prophecy, would be an Antichrist, and would cause a worldwide destruction, Armageddon. And then Jesus would return for the second time from the spiritual world. So it's not all that complicated if you think about it. But let me read from the book and see if it makes sense. All right. So this author is starting to talk about Joseph Weiss, W-E-I-S-S, who I guess was a outstanding scholar. And this author here, Gershom Scholem, however you say his name, he starts out here, and you know I read the material, and I'm going to start out where I highlighted there. And I'll show a couple clips along the way to try to have the pictures explain a lot. So they're expecting a Messiah. Their religion entails rituals serving some kind of invisible spiritual deities. and apparently even sacrificing humans to curry favor and from them. So Joseph Wise, when he came to Jerusalem in 1940, he was a young man of wide interest and reading who was groping for his way. So a lot of people today are groping for their way, trying to figure out what to understand. Growing up in Budapest, he had eagerly taken up what Hungarian, German, and Jewish literature and philosophy had to offer. So he was a hungry young man for knowledge. A lot of people out there like that. From a non-observant Jewish background, he was early attracted by Jewish learning and ritual, and fought his way to the study of the primary sources of Judaism. Kind of what I'm trying to do. Understand why they want to destroy Christianity and why they hate Christians and non-Jews so much. And apparently they rejected Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago, and they need to make amends for that. I've been reading this material and other books, and apparently they believe that the current situation is their fourth captivity. And of course, I'm familiar with the captivity in Egypt. We've all seen the movie with Moses, many of us have. And Moses guided the Jews out of Egypt, and with the many plagues and incidences there to convince the Pharaoh to let my people go. Well, anyways, I did a book review on Jeremiah in the Old Testament, and apparently Babylonia, God, whoever spoke to King Nebuchadnezzar, Jeremiah in the Old Testament, I made a video on that, to go down to Jerusalem and destroy the temple, the one they want to rebuild right now, that apparently they even have a coin with President Donald Trump's head on it. This is all connected. Because the Jewish people back then were sacrificing their sons and daughters to the demon god Baal, Moloch, whatever. So this young man wanted to learn the primary sources of Judaism. And I've already said there are Orthodox old-fashioned Jewish people who don't believe in this reformed alternate God, if you want, to Judaism. There was a battle in the Jewish world. And I believe, like in World War II, all those Jews who were killed, taken into prisons to work for the Germans, were probably the Jews who opposed the Zionist pursuits of a global world order and expecting a Messiah to be their conqueror and destroy all of their enemies, and so they could enslave the peoples of the planet and rule it. So anyways, Joseph Wise. This thirst for a deeper understanding of the spiritual universe of Judaism never left him. Spiritual universe. So like I said, Einstein, I'll keep referring to this. The simplest answer is probably the correct one. Spiritual universe. The universe has spiritual beings. The real reality is not this manifest physical flesh and blood reality. They talk about ascension, and Earth will ascend into a higher dimension to probably be equal with this spiritual reality that apparently is the real reality. The spiritual universe of Judaism never left him, and the dramatic conflicts within the Jewish world, first in Hungary and later in Israel, contributed much to his acute awareness of the issues involved. His keen sense of the dialectic situations prevented him from taking an easy and all too comfortable, or I should rather say, an unambiguous stand on these controversies. So his keen sense of the dialectic means that he was listening to all sides of the stories from the Orthodox Jews who were opposed to the Zionist global world order pursuit, and listening to the Zionists who were pursuing it, and the Kabbalists who were into mysticism, magic, and witchcraft. So he was listening to all sides, the dialectic approach. So he was listening to all the unambiguous stands on those controversies. Moreover, there was an additional conflict in himself between his unmistakable tendency to put things in a radical way and his contemplative bent of mind. I might say indeed that he was torn between these two. He was a Zionist, but a very strange one who at times, overwhelmed by his own doubts, would deny his own convictions. He was extremely critical of orthodoxy, but there was in him a strong streak of sympathy with the Nitriae Carta attitudes. So I went and looked that up. When I read these words, I like to look it up. So apparently, like I said, there are groups of people who are opposed to Zionism. They're Jewish people. So anybody who wants to be accused of being an anti-Semite, I have to ask you, do you hate the God-loving Jews as well as the Satan-loving Jews? There are two groups, it seems. Anyways, so Joseph Wise had a compassion for these, I'll show you the name because I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but these types of Jews. The Nitriae Carta, you can see it up there. Well, you can see that these particular Jews opposed Zionism. Give back to the Palestinians. Zionism and Judaism are not the same. So you can go look it up. So here's Joseph Wise. He's studying the Orthodox, God-believing ones, the ones who weren't trying to control the world, versus the Zionists, who are controlling the world and involved with the Illuminati, the banking systems, who brought us all this wars and destruction. There are two groups. So you can see that this particular group of Jewish people, if my focus will work, anti-Zionism world Jewry, you can go look it up on your computer. Here you go. Zionism and Judaism are extreme oppositions. So there are Jewish people who are siding with me that they should not have brought us World War I and World War II to be able to get the Palestinians land and destroy all those Arab nations and control all of the governments with the money supply, apparently all serving the synagogue of Satan. So there are God-fearing Jews who are opposed to that. All right, continuing on, page 177. Joseph Wise. In his personal life, periods of strict observance alternated with periods of open indifference to ritual. At all times, however, he remained passionately concerned with Judaism as a religious phenomenon and its meaning, or rather its meanings. For he never could bring himself to agree with those who are in possession of a ready and explicit definition. His indecision in matters that called for a definite stand made him very shy in his personal relations with people, and when he trusted and opened up to you, he proved to be a man of extraordinary personal charm, even in his perplexities. I spoke of his being torn by conflicting tendencies in his mind, but he was utterly single-minded in his scholarly pursuit and commitment. So he was serious about learning the truth, or learning what Judaism was all about. 25 years ago, he had already set himself a definite task and he never permitted himself to deviate from it. This task was the exploration of the Hasidic movement from its beginnings to its spiritual climax. In the figure of Rabbi Naaman of Brazla, whose enigmatic personality and even more enigmatic teachings had held the most powerful fascination for wise ever since he first came into contact with the group of the followers in Jerusalem many years ago. So far I've talked about the Hasidics and the that other name there I can't pronounce, the Neutrali Carta. I'm just looking to see if I have a thing on Hasidics, reminding myself what I printed out here. But I think I made a video on the Hasidic. I'll show it eventually. Hasidic Jewish people versus the ones I just showed you who are opposed to Zionism. So he was, the task was the exploration of the Hasidic movement from its beginnings to its spiritual climax. Again, we get the word spiritual. Remember, we're spiritual beings. They were looking for a spiritual entity to come on the scene. In the figure of Rabbi Naaman of Brazla, whose enigmatic personality and even more enigmatic teachings had held the most powerful fascination for wise ever since he first came into contact with the group of his followers in Jerusalem many years ago. So he kind of grew up as a Jewish person, non-religious. Like a lot of Christians don't go to church and stuff like that. They believe, but they don't get involved, and that's the way it's been programmed on the people for the last 50, 60 years, or longer. Only an exceptional personality, such as that of Rabbi Mordecai Joseph Linier of Izblasa, could arouse his scholarly interest in the generations after Rabbi Newman's death. It was the outbreak of tremendous spiritual power. I underlined that. It was the outbreak of tremendous spiritual power. So what kind of outbreak of tremendous spiritual power could you have? And originality in the early Hasidic movement, struggling for recognition and ascendancy in an ever wider circles, which captivated his imagination. So this tremendous spiritual power captivated his imagination. And I suppose all these secret teachings that they promised to teach people who joined the Freemasons would capture people's imagination. Same thing with being initiated into the Illuminati or the Rosicrucian. It would capture your imagination. People look into the fantasy world and learn about all those spiritual powers and being a witch and doing those things. Just saying. And led him to concentrate on its history and phenomenology. I looked up phenomenology. Did I print that out? Yes, I did. Phenomenology. So what the heck is phenomenology? Phenomenology is a study of structures of consciousness. Consciousness. And experimented from the first-person point of view. Can't quite read this. I need a little light. There we go. The central structure of an experiment in the intentionality of being directed towards something as an experience of or about some object. Phenomenology. A broad disciple and method of inquiry into philosophy developed largely by the German philosophers Udman Hasset and Martin Heidegger. Phenomenology. So to me, I guess what they were studying is the different effects of consciousness upon the different kinds of rituals, magic, religious beliefs, the rituals they do, the following of these things. Phenomenology. Almost everything he published was concerned with these problems. He immersed himself deeply in the study of the sources. He brought to his work that particular intensity and the power of penetration which characterized his mind. Because of the many doubts and scruples deriving from his inner struggles, why would he have doubts and scruple problems? Was there something they were doing which most people would discern as evil? Just saying. He published relatively very little, but many of his papers are distinguished by the high originality, and some of them have made a great impact in the study of Hasidism. At the same time, they were bound to arouse controversy by their bold and sometimes daring thesis, and I admit that I am one of those who not infrequently had protracted discussions with him about some of the major contentions. He has laid the groundwork for extending and the deep studies, especially of Rabbi Naaman of Breslau, and their outcome was anticipated with the greatest hopes. So I did make a little clip about the Hasidism, so I should play that right now. Again, trying to keep it simple with the pictures. I've showed you the Jews who were opposed to Zionism, and now I think I'll show you some Jews who are pro-Zionism, so we can kind of see some of the differences. And keep the story simple. This conversation can be simple and it can be understood. Well, welcome to another investigation at the Yahoo image site. And the word I'm looking up right now is Hasidism. A Jewish group of people, a particular organization. And the interesting characteristics about them. Look like there's some serious praying folks. And serious strange dress attire. Young boys here too. Old men with beards. Hadassic Jews. So apparently they're pretty serious and colorful entities. They wear these little black cubes on their head. Apparently, the way I understand it, it's some kind of representation of Saturn. And Saturn's also called the planet of Satan. So they're raised when they're very young for these beliefs. A life apart, Hasidism in America. So they do live apart from the rest of us. So you can go on Yahoo image site and check this out. Hasidism, Hasidic Jews. Well, I hope that ends the conversation about people being anti-Semitic, because apparently some Jews are opposed to Zionism and the world government and enslaving the people. And some Jews are for that and want to destroy Christianity. So you got two different types of Jewish people, like you do all kinds of other people on the planet. You got good people, you got evil people. At the same time, they were bound to arouse controversy by their bold and sometimes daring thesis. And I admit that I am one of those who not infrequently had protracted discussions with him about some of the major contentions. So they were discussing some major issues. He has laid the groundwork for extended and deep studies, especially on Rabbi Naaman of Breslau, and their outcome was anticipated with the greatest hopes. His premature death has put an end to all those labors, but the haunted figure of Joseph Weiss will remain with those who knew him, admired his depth and insight, and sympathized with his sufferings and tribulations. The exploration of Hasidism in its most creative period of its origins, history, and meaning has occupied scholars of the last two generations. And as I have said, this was the center of Joseph Weiss's research. So he was focusing on Hasidism. What was Hasidism as compared to the other group, the Neutral Karta, the people who opposed Zionism? The exploration of Hasidism in its most crucial period of its origins, history, and meaning have occupied scholars of the last two generations. And as I have said, this was the center of Joseph Weiss's research. In honoring his memory, I wish to take up the discussion of one of the fundamental issues which all historians of Hasidism have encountered on their way, which has been viewed by quite a few of them as one of the keys to the understanding of the movement. So, yeah, I think we should try to understand the movement myself. People trying to have a global world order. This is the Messianic element in early Hasidism, i.e. from Israel Baal Shem to the pupils of Magred and Madrich at the end of the 18th century. So I did look up that word, the Messianic element, looking for a Messiah, from Israel Baal Shem to the pupils of Magid and Meshrich at the end of the 18th century. So I just wanted to go look up and see if there was anything in these pictures about these people that was interesting. So apparently here's the word. M-I-G-G-I-D. So apparently they've been having these different groups and these different things over the last so it didn't tell me a lot, but you can look up what the word means. Was Messianism at the center of the movement? So I did show you the word Messianic, so I did make another video on Messianism. So again, to get a clearer picture, what is it about some kind of otherworldly thing that they're talking about? Something that's so important that they would plan on, I suppose, according to biblical prophecy, when they do declare Jesus a false savior and start enforcing the Noahide laws and beheading people. I guess we should understand what the Messianism is when they were looking for, waiting for a Messiah. Check out this little clip I made. I've got a book here I've been going over. Gershom Scholem, probably saying his name wrong. The Messianic Idea in Judaism, and other essays on Jewish spirituality. So, a quick synopsis. More than 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people were praying for a Messiah. It was prophesied that a Messiah, a Savior, would come, a God, a deity from the spiritual world. Does that make sense? Anyways, Jesus showed up. We all know about Christianity. But they rejected Jesus because he was preaching that we are to love one another. Now think about that. That's why he was rejected. Anyways, 2,000 years later, here we are, and they're expecting the Messiah again. But the kind of a Messiah they expected then, and the kind of Messiah they expect now, is a warrior, king, destroyer, Messiah who will destroy all of these people controlling the Jewish nation of Israel, Zionism, Illuminati, Kabbalah, not all Jewish people. Everybody else that's their enemies will be destroyed or enslaved. Messianism. So I thought I'd look at some pictures. And yes, you can go on Yahoo image site and just put Messianism and see these pictures. And maybe pictures do speak 1,000 words. So you got this being with angels. I guess you could call it a Messiah. Probably Rephaim, the fallen angel. And he's got a sword in his hand, and he's stepping on this man here who's squirting blood up into the air. Looks like a little demon right here. Messianism. So they're expecting a Messiah to have all of their enemies destroyed, killed, or enslaved. Messianism, secrecy and mysticism. Mysticism, of course, is Kabbalah, alchemy, i.e. sorcery, witchcraft. Messianism against Christology. It is an anti-Christian focus. Jewish Messianism, Messiah return, justice, peace, restoration of God's people. The king, the warrior king, destroy all of Israel's enemies. Revolution, dictatorship, Marxism, Messianism. Classless society, get it? Justice, peace. Are you buying it? Stalinist confessions. After World War I, an espionage event. They sent a bunch of spies and guerrilla warfare fighters into Russia. I'm sure nobody saw it coming. Sneak attack. Abducted the Tsar and his family, executed him. Had troops from other countries policing all the railroad stations and every place else. And over the next 10 to 15 years, they liquidated, some say, 100 million Russians, Christians and other good people, not Jewish people, and destroyed the Christian churches after World War I. Messianism. Six-pointed star. Messianism, Zionism, and Jewish religions. Radicalism. Those who contend with the Lord will be shattered. Against them he will thunder in the heavens. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king, and will exalt the horn of his anointed. Messianic text. Think this is serious? Here's a guy flying with wings and his cell phone rings. God is not available. Violence and Messianism, Jewish philosophy, and the great conflicts of the 20th century. Are people really awake? Do they understand what is going on? The attack on we the people? A 100 million people killed in Russia after World War I. Not during. They denied Jesus Christ. They want a Messiah that's going to help them conquer the world. Prophecy says an Antichrist will come. Yahoo image site. German Expressionism and the Messianism of a generation. Just saying, somewhere along the way, we the people need to wake up. Messianism, apocalypse, and redemption. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. What do you suppose this picture means? Click the link on these pictures and you get the details. That looks like a alien picture here. Prepare yourself. Oh my. I am here, it says under this picture. The Shia authorities correctly identified Messianic beliefs with beastism, or the desire to wage racial holy war for Jewish interest. Oh my. So much to learn. What's it going to take to wake people up? The Scepter of the Star. Messianism in Light of the Dead Sea Scrolls. John Collins. Kabbalah, alchemy, sorcery, witchcraft. The Ancient Hope, Aliyah. Aliyah is when all the Jewish people return from all over the world, which has been happening for the past 100 years. I've showed pictures of Aliyah. You can see here, Aliyah. Go look it up on Yahoo image site and see all the pictures. They control our politicians. They control our governments. They control the banking system. And they have plans. So the author of this book, Gershom Scholem, however you say his name, was asking, was Messianism at the center of the movement? Was it one of the prime elements that pervaded its teachings, as it had the teachings of the Lunaric school of Kabbalah, which formed the basis of the Hasidic doctrine? So it says it right there. The school of Kabbalah was the basis of the Hasidic doctrine, this group of Jews, Hasidism, who wore those little black cubes representing Saturn on their heads, which represents Saturn as the planet for Satan, and the symbols, and their school of Kabbalah. President Donald Trump had a Kabbalah teacher. His ex-wife wrote a book on the Kabbalah. Kabbalah, through the ages, many of them have been accused of sorcery, witchcraft, magic. Just saying, there's definitely an anti-Christian element to all of that. Yes? No? Or did it disappear as an essential part of the formation of the movement and its doctrine, so that we can speak of the liquidation of Messianism as a living force? Or should we rather take a more dialectic view? So they want to talk about some opposing views and speak of the transformation which it underwent, which brought about a profound change to be defined not so much as the liquidation, but as the neutralization of this element. So even in the Jewish camp, between the Orthodox, God-fearing, anti-Zionist Jews and the Hasidic Kabbalist, apparently Saturn's satanic, anti-Christian focus, they have their battles going back and forth. It is obvious that wherever the answer to this question, it is a matter of great consequence to the view one will take of the better character of Hasidism. The controversy on this point has been lively. I would suspect so. I would even say impassioned. Of course, I do not refer here to the apologists of the movement belonging to the Hasidic camp itself, who declined to take note of the issues arising from the fact of historical development. Because of them, there is no such thing, and Hasidism in the eyes has remained essentially unchanged throughout its history. Among modern scholars, men of such widely differing perspectives as Simon Dubnow and Martin Buber have supported the view that Hasidism in its classical period was a liquidation of the Messianism as an acute, immediate force. So are they saying they don't need the Messiah to come from the spiritual world to be their leader? That they're going to use maybe their own forces, their own capabilities, their own controlling abilities of the planet. A liquidation which constitutes a reaction to the destructive outbreak of Messianism in the Sabbatean movement. The Sabbatean movement, Levi Sabbatai Levi, whatever his name is. I've made videos on this from the Encyclopedia Judaica. Anyways, in 1666, of all the years, 1666, almost 500 years ago, 400 and something years ago, Levi Sabbatai or Sabbatai Levi, Sabbatean Levi, proclaimed himself to be the Savior of the Jewish people. And he taught that if you can't get to heaven by being, and I'm paraphrasing, by being a good person, you could get to heaven by being a bad person. But you had to take it just as serious. You had to be a bad person, really bad. And you had to do it every day. It was like a religious duty to be evil and bad if you wanted to be redeemed or make it to heaven. Said there were two paths. So they had a outbreak of Messianism in 1666. And Sabbatai Levi, or Levi Sabbatai. Sorry about that, I don't remember all these words exactly. But anyways, the Sabbatian movement, and it was commandments that were completely opposite of God's 10 commandments. He even married a prostitute, etc., etc. Quite a bizarre story about a man who said he was the Messiah, and he would go into lunatic mind frames, act like a complete insane man, and they were actually believing. It was a big uproar in the Jewish community. They were elated that the Savior had come, and they didn't have to follow God's laws, that they could go this opposite way and be redeemed. Short story. Buber said quite fittingly on the teaching of Hasidism that it had proclaimed in the strongest and clearest manner that there is no definite, exhibitable, teachable magic action in established formula and gestures and attitudes and tensions of the soul that is effective for redemption. Only the harrowing of all actions. So you have to make everything sacred and holy to be qualified for redemption. So you see those pictures of the Jewish people at the Wailing Wall or in the bus station or on the corners, and they have their beards and they have their little books, and they're all going praying, praying, and praying, and all of our leaders even going to the Wailing Wall, George Bush Jr. and Donald Trump, and everybody with the little hats on, John Bolton. They have to go do this religious ritual to the Wailing Wall. Hallowing of all actions, without distinction, possesses redemptive power. Only out of the redemption of the everyday does the all-day of redemption glow. In the same connection, he says of the liquidation of the personal Messianism and Hasidism, an interpretation of which I cannot agree as follows. So this author isn't buying the idea that they don't need a Messiah to bring about their redemption, a warrior king to help them conquer and destroy all their enemies. Apparently the rest of us. The Hasidic message of redemption stands in opposition to the Messianic self-differentiation of one man from other men, and for one time from other times, and for one act from other actions. All mankind is accorded the co-working power. All times is directly redemptive. All action for the sake of God may be Masonic action. All action for all peoples taking action for the sake of God may be Masonic action. But only unpremeditative action can be action for the sake of God. The self-differentiation and reflection of man to the messianic superiority of this person, of this hour, of this action, destroys the unpremeditated quality of the act, turning the whole of his life in the world to God, and then allowing it to open and unfold in all its moments until the last. This is man's work towards redemption. And I do know that the people who join many of the secret societies and get initiated into those societies, it's a long, drawn-out process, and they have to give up their own personal desires and will and live like a monk and only want the will of God to go through them, whatever being they're trying to get to work through them in all these secret societies, which appears to me to be Luciferic, satanic type forces. And even on the Freemasonic photos I've shown and the hierarchy, the pyramids, they have Lucifer written on the top of those, and some of those it says Satan. So it doesn't seem like it's a godly Jesus Christ type of religious deity that they're wishing to possess them. Just saying. Me thinking, right or wrong, I'm have the right to think my opinion when I try to read stuff like this. And I am trying to make it quite simple for people to understand the concept here. And you get these thick books, as many of them I have, and a lot of books on the Kabbalah and all this stuff. You know, I think people would like to try to figure out what's going on, Rick. What is all this craziness going on in the world? The diametrically, opposite position has been taken up by the Ben Zion Denor in his study on the beginnings of Hasidism. He sees the movement as permeated by the strongest Messianic impulses from its very start, and at the same time makes it a kind of a forerunner of Zionism. So now you have it, why they are so bent on rebuilding King Solomon's temple. Why President Donald Trump said that he recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, so they could move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, along with leaders from countries all over the world, and Israel calling on Russia and the United States and other leaders all over the world to contribute in the building of King Solomon's temple. It's all a fulfillment of a Masonic savior who will not arrive until they rebuild the temple. And it's the forerunner of Zionism. So now you know what Zionism is. It's all this work and effort, bringing us World War I, World War II, 9/11, destroying the Middle East, building a greater Israel, and preparing the world for a global revolution, the good people against the evil people. I hesitate to do it, but I did make a clip. I looked up satanic LGBT, however you say it, the satanic gay pride. Because I know they are messing with our minds, our culture. And I just want to show that these forces believe strongly what they're doing. And it is in complete opposition to family values and Christianity. And you can see how they can bring about this hatred and get the peoples here in the United States to kill each other and all over the world. So satanic gay pride, I just looked it up. I said to myself, what are these pictures going to tell me? Oh well, the world is a-changing. Rick Miracle reporting, yet again going onto the Yahoo image site and looking up to satanic gay pride, those keywords. And lordy, lordy, these images are a bit frightening, to be honest. That's definitely satanic. Satanic, there's your witch and devil. LGBT pride bash. I guess you don't have to stretch your imagination too much for this. And over to the right, you can click the link. It says Kindred Spirits, the spiritual ties behind witchcraft. There's the devil himself with the upside down cross and the wings. There's the devil chasing this guy in his underwear with wings. Oh my. Oh my. Disobey. Anton LaVey exhibit. Oh my. They got a website called The Joy of Satan. One of my commenters sent that to me and said, Satan's really the good guy according to this website. Jesus and God are the bad guys. LGBT Church of Satan. Signs of Bafflement. Medallion. You can get your medallion probably online from these organizations, if you're that crazy. His world awaits you. There's a big demon with horns. See a theme here? I bet hell is fabulous. Is this guy crazy? Israeli flags. Gay pride parade at Tel Aviv. One of the hottest spots for gay tourists is Tel Aviv, Israel these days. I guess that tells us something. Oh my. I don't even want to say this. Oh my. They've got us all fooled. Not me. Worship him, and his infernal spirit will rise within. Oh my. Wow, what did that say? The war against Christmas. So it's not just me saying these things. There is a battle going on. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. There's not much more to say. Oh boy. Yikes. Well, oh, I don't even know what to say. They're misleading the young people, stealing their souls. Here's a confrontation here. This guy has a sign says, repent. Turn from your sin to Jesus. And you got this man in this dressed up like a woman's outfit, I guess. Is that the kind of revolution they're going to bring to the world? Got Jesus depicted here as a gay banner on him. SWAT sticker. 6-pointed star like on the Israeli flag. Upside down stars, satanic stars. Oh boy. Let's see. Here's your choice. This guy or Jesus. That's your choice. This guy or Jesus. This kind of reality. Oh boy. This guy's got this long thing out, I guess a pretended phallic unit, and the little children are holding it. Jesus had 2 dads. Ah, here's some reptile beings holding an upside down cross. 86 best satanic pride images. Oh boy. Oh, what's this guy here got? He's got an arm taken off a human, bloody at one end. Oh boy. Oh my goodness, my gay agenda. I guess he wants to have sex with the dog, second one down. Oh my goodness, this is just too disgusting to read this. Lucifer. Look what they're teaching people. have to be mentally ill to be doing these things. Look at this guy. Well, we can say that possibly we have a very mentally ill society coming upon us. Can you see the revolution? Can you see the war? Oh my, what do you think? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. If you don't like what I'm showing, give me a thumbs down. Let's see how many of who's out there watching my videos. Thank you, Rick Merico reporting. Now, I did mention here earlier when I read that there was a destructive outbreak of Messianism during the Sabbatean movement in 1666. And they were preaching that to do evil is the way to get redeemed and to turn our society into whatever they're turning us into from that clip I just showed you. Certainly would qualify as doing some serious evil. And apparently some Messiah, Sabbatean Levi, which had that whole thing and the whole world in an uproar back then, the Jewish world. So anyways, this Messianic impulses, forerunner of Zionism, Hasidic movement involved in the school of Kabbalah. Kabbalists have been accused of sorcery, witchcraft, and you can see what they're doing to our society, dividing us. A more diluted and restrained version of this view has recently been presented by Isaiah Trisby in a long paper, The Messianic Idea and the Messianic Trends in the Growth of Hasidism. A third view, emphasizing the neutralization of Messianism as a historical force, was adopted by me in the chapter on Hasidism as the major trends in Jewish mysticism. So I did make a clip on mysticism, which I will play at this time. Hello, and welcome to another investigation of images on Yahoo image site. The key word this time is mysticism. So I thought I'd just look up the word on Yahoo Images, mysticism, to possibly give us a clue as to what mysticism means. We have an interesting picture here. To me, obviously, the sun with rays. And down on the bottom, palmistry, reading people's palms. An all-seeing eye right here, and a clock. Mysticism. Here's some kind of spirits with some old man in a cave. Mysticism. Oh my, here's an interesting picture. Mysticism. Kind of reminds me of some of the pictures that people have painted or drawn when they take drugs like peyote or ayahuasca to go into a trance and to see the invisible realm. All kinds of eyes everywhere and mysticism. Yin and yang, fire and water, mysticism. Mysticism. Five-pointed star. A lot of interesting symbols here. Kind of angels in the sky. Some kind of powerful being. And some kind of beings under the earth. Open a door into the outer space. Rosicrucian picture here. There's your sun and the face. And going outside the firmament, the big bubble over the planet Earth, is another world, as you can see here. Mysticism. Interesting pictures on Yahoo image site. Wow. That's some kind of trip into some kind of weird dimension with all these angels all around the perimeter and a bright light in the center. Oh boy. Is that a Hindu symbol? The women with many arms and holding a head, Shiva, the goddess of destruction. The goddess returns, deity mysticism of the 21st century. Whenever you see these pictures, you can look over to the right and click the link. Mysticism. So what do people believe? What is it the powers that be don't want you to know? Obviously, a black satanic mysticism image here with the goat's head with the upside down star. Black satanic mysticism. You can click the link. I wouldn't kind of recommend it though. And here we have ETs in Jewish mysticism. I've been saying these things are connected. How an alien savior can arise in modern Judaism. And here's the Sephirot, the tree of life, the movement from the lower dimensions into the higher dimensions. Gems of mysticism, the order of the Christian mystics. Spiritual growth, duty, karma, reincarnation, the Christ, masters of wisdom, and miscellaneous. Wow, here's a crazy picture. Looks like a kind of an evil woman with these wings that are on fire and these fiery chains holding on to some kind of post with skulls' heads on them. And a snake here, a serpent, a spider, a scorpion, another kind of spider here. Oh my. God's Chariot. The big book of Christian mysticism. Contemplative mysticism. Mysticism, to dwell on the unseen, to withdraw ourselves from the things of sense into communion with God, to endeavor to partake of the divine nature that is of holiness. Crystal ball. Mysticism, another book here. The preeminent study of nature and the development of spiritual consciousness. Evelyn Underhill. Looks like a labyrinth here. A maze. Alchemy and mysticism. The Hermetic Museum. Wow, here's an interesting image on the Yahoo image site when I looked up mysticism. Spirals in these religious buildings. Mysticism. 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 That's cool. So what do we know? Mysticism and mental illness. Oh my. Darkness. Oh my. A strategy card game of ancient mysticism. You think people should be playing around with this stuff? Mysticism, sacred and profane. Mysticism. A lot of people are drawn into this stuff, part of the New Age cult teachings, and told that Christianity is outdated and they want to destroy Christianity. What do you think? Mysticism. Involving beings looking like angels, skulls, Rosicrucian, Kabbalah, apparently part of the religion of the globalist Zionist Illuminati, Messianic peoples and secret societies. Mysticism is important for religious belief as it strengthens both individual and communal experiences. Those closer relationships with the divine are celebrated at an individual and communal level. Many religions base part of much of their belief in mystic practices. Wow. Some of these images really can play little games with the mind if you see all the different faces. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he reveals his secret unto his servants the prophets. Amos 3.7. Christian mysticism and the original lie. Well, there you have it. My little investigation into the keyword mysticism on the Yahoo image site. You can click the links to each of these images and get the story. It'll be quite an interesting investigation. I'm not trying to make it a far stretch, but they are polarizing our society. They're doing it all over the world. It is an anti-Christian effort. It is part of biblical prophecy that this would happen. There's supposed to be an Antichrist Messiah come on the scene. Apparently Christianity will be banned. People will have to swear allegiance to this Lucifer satanic type of deity. People will have to be microchipped. And crazy enough, the monitoring systems, the facial recognition, computer monitoring, knowing everything we do, everywhere we go, nobody can hide, and the microwave transmission systems, and apparently the attack on our environmental systems. They're preparing the day when they turn on this huge prison planet, so it seems, to these evil forces, the Antichrist. How bizarre, I mean, if you can use your imagination, how bizarre will it be? I mean, banning Christianity and people being religious and being dragged to guillotines. Fulfilling biblical prophecy. And I know what a lot of people watching this video might say. Man, I'm crazy upset about biblical prophecy. I wish there was no such thing as biblical prophecy. It's just horrible. And I don't know the answers to those questions. I'm looking. This view was shared by Joseph Weiss in one of his studies on the beginnings of Hasidism and the contemplative mysticism of the Magig. I showed you what those were, some other Jewish people's organizations. It has been primarily accepted by Trisby, but in part it has also come under fire from him. I intend to offer a restatement of my argument in considering the evidence. It should be clear from the outset that I do not speak of the later period of Hasidism, starting around 1800, which was not entirely lacking in the resurgence of a messianic claims or impulses in connection with some outstanding Hasidic leaders such as Jacob Yaskov Horowitz, the Seer of London. Seer of London, S-E-E-R. So I did look that up. So apparently in this town called Lubin, L-U-B-I-N, they had this guy that was a prophet, a psychic, a channeler, a magician, whatever. And he was delivering some prophecies. So you can go look up the Seer of Lubin and see who this guy was. The kind of things going on since the 1800s and before and after. So there is the spiritual religious component to all this. Plenty of pictures. You can go look at them, the Seer of Lubin, and click the links to the picture and get the scoop on the guy. His pupils, Jacob Yaskov, and a saintly Jew of Pishla, and David of Livlo, and overshadowing them all, the figure of Naaman Braslav, the great-grandson of Israel Baal Shem, whose life was doubtlessly preserved by a sense of messianic vocation. So again, getting back to Einstein's sentence, the simplest answer is probably the correct one. So we keep talking about some kind of Messiah. Biblical prophecy says that Antichrist being is supposed to come. And we can see with the passage in Secret of Noahide Laws in 1991 with President George Bush Sr. surrounded by rabbis. And one of the laws says that heresy is punishable by beheading. And being a heretic means believing in a false deity. And they are seriously anti-Christian. So you can see what the picture will be. If you don't swear allegiance to this Antichrist character that comes on the scene, this Luciferic entity, whatever they call him, representing some kind of deity, being from another world, and wearing those little black cubes on their head representing Saturn. And apparently in the United Nations meditation room, they have a gigantic black cube for this occult religion. And in the Jewish holy site where they all walk around, Ramadan, whatever that is, there's a gigantic black cube there. And even in the Dome of the Rock, where they want to rebuild King Solomon's temple, apparently there's a big black cube. Strange stuff, you think? Whose teaching is strongly imbued with messianic elements, even though much of it is expressed in a veiled and roundabout manner. Let's think about the video I made yesterday on the Talmud Unmasked. Punishable by killing people who investigate their laws, the Talmud. So they don't want people to know what's in those books, to know their laws. The rest of us don't deserve to live and understand their religions. And anybody who pries into it is supposed to be killed. So they don't want people to know their laws. They have something to hide. All right, just a little bit more here. Page 180. Let me quote some sentences about our problem, which I wrote 30 years ago. One can say that after the rise and collapse of Sabbatianism, there were only three ways left open to the Kabbalah. So two key words there. You can go look them up if you don't understand Sabbatianism. Sabbatai Levi came on the scene in 1666. He said he was a Messiah for the Jewish people, and he preached that doing evil was the way to be redeemed, because it was easier to do that than to do good. And then only 3 ways left open to the Kabbalah. And the Kabbalists, according to the Encyclopedia Judaica, many of the Kabbalists were accused of sorcery, which is witchcraft, heresy, divination, etc. And apparently, even according to the Encyclopedia Judaica, I made videos from the Encyclopedia Judaica, 1973 edition, published in Israel, in English, that says historically the Kabbalah has been the religious culture of the Jews. And the Kabbalists were accused of sorcery. Sabbath and Levi came on the scene in 1666, 666, the mark of the beast, and preached that evil was the way to be redeemed. And you can see why they're attacking our culture. They hate and the people who are Christian or family values and who point out when they're doing bad things and say shame on you, they hate that. I can't say it in such any more way than that, more emphatic. They hate that. Now, I will say this, apparently they were having problems with the people in Russia and Germany in the 1500s and 1600s and 1700s. And so they brought us World War I and World War II, completely destroying Germany twice, and invading Russia after World War I and killing up to 100 million people, Christians, and destroying the churches as vengeance for being policed and not approved of by the Russians and the Germans and the people in all the other countries. And in the 1500s, they were exiled from France and Spain and Britain, and they made their way back into those countries a couple hundred years later, had the British king executed, the French king executed with the revolutions, and killed and purged a lot of the elites, the people who knew things. Again, acts of vengeance. And they wound up taking over these societies this time. So you got the word Sabbatianism, which was the Sabbatai Zivi, who said he was the Messiah, preaching to do evil was the way to go, acting like a very mentally ill man. And it was a rash of Messianism throughout the Jewish community all over Europe and the Middle East back then, 1666, believing their Messiah had arrived. But he wound up being imprisoned and then later died. And so it was a huge embarrassment to the Jewish peoples. So that's why it's in here. They can say there was, one can say that after the rise and collapse of Sabbatianism, they actually thought this guy who was preaching evil was the savior. Only 3 ways were left open to the Kabbalah, the people studying this mysticism. I just showed you pictures. In addition to that, of accepting the contradictions in which the new believers and adherents of Sabbatai Zivi had become hopelessly enmeshed. Here's his name. Right by my finger. So Sabbatai Zivi said he was the Messiah. All across the Jewish community, they were going crazy. The Messiah is here. And he was preaching to do evil. And apparently the Sultan in Turkey had him arrested and said, if you convert to Islam, I'll spare your life. And apparently he did, maybe in name only. But again, it was a great embarrassment to the Jewish people. And the Turks, the Sultan, who had him arrested in 1666, those were the people who had the Ottoman Empire and controlled the Middle East and had to be destroyed because they would not allow the Jewish people to have the Palestinians' land to rebuild the ancient kingdom of Judea, now called Israel. It all ties together. It's a Messiah. It's a spiritual evil entity that they're expecting. The way that I understand it. You can interpret it the way you want to. I'm thinking and trying to share and trying to figure out why they're doing some of the things that they're doing. Horrifically killing people all over the world. Wanting to attack Venezuela, Iran, and more countries. Bringing us 9/11, World War I, World War II, the President John Kennedy, and many others. It's a dangerous business to get at the truth. One was to pretend that nothing in particular happened. So they wanted to just try to ignore what had happened with Sabbatai Zivai. This was actually what a good many Orthodox Kabbalists tried to do. They continued in the old way without bothering much about new ones. Another way was to renounce all attempts to create a mass movement in order to avoid the repetition of the disastrous consequences which had followed the most recent of these attempts. That was the attitude of some of the most important representatives of later Kabbalisms, who entirely renounced the more popular aspects of Lurianism and tried to lead the Kabbalah back from the marketplace to the solitude of the mystic's place of retreat. They wanted to go take this mysticism, magicians, witchcraft type of Kabbalah back into secrecy. Finally, there was a third way, and that was the one which Hasidism took, particularly during its classical period. Here, the Kabbalah did not renounce an proselytizing mission to convert people to their religion. On the contrary, Hasidism, a typical revivalist movement, aimed from the beginning at the widest possible sphere of influence. Proselytizing movement. So they want the rest of the world to be Kabbalist into this evil. And they need to convert people from Christians into this Hasidic type Kabbalah teachings, which I can describe basically as this New Age culture that they're teaching, along with the transgenderism and all of that, obviously consuming the minds of many of our people, making them do very bizarre things in the video I showed you. Hasidism represents an attempt to preserve those elements of Kabbalism which were capable of evoking a popular response. So this magic was capable of evoking a popular response, teaching people about magic, calling it many different names, New Age, whatever, but stripped of the Messianic flavor to which they owed their chief successes during the preceding period. That seems to me to be the main point. Hasidism tried to eliminate the element of Messianism with its dazzling but highly dangerous amalgamation of mysticism. That's magic, witchcraft. And the apocalyptic mood, destruction of the planet, without renouncing the popular appeal of later Kabbalism. Perhaps one should rather speak of neutralization of the Messianic element. I hope I shall not be misunderstood. According to this author, I am far from suggesting that the Messianic hope and belief in a Messianic redemption disappeared from the hearts of Hasidism. That would be utterly untrue. So he says here, this author, the Messianic idea in Judaism. I am far from suggesting that the Messianic hope and belief in a Messianic redemption, this Messiah, this obviously opposite of Jesus Christ, that prophecy says in the Bible is going to be an antichrist, teaching, controlling the planet, and the people who don't pledge allegiance to this Lucifer-type deity will be punished by beheading. And all this is part of prophecy. Disappeared from the hearts of Hasidism, and that would be utterly untrue, and he's tying that in with Zionism. So there you have it. Hopefully I made it simple enough. Apparently spiritual evil forces against spiritual good forces affecting planet Earth. And we can all see the results of the wars and the insanity of people's behaviors. Chaos and anarchy. As President George Bush Sr. said, Out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order, a rule of law. Will it be Zionism and Hasidic Sabbatai Zivi law, the things that they're enforcing these days with the LGBT movement and transgenderism, and even when you go to a restaurant, it has a picture of a guy and a gal on the door, transgender, and protecting these classes of people, tying in with you can't speak negative about Zionism or boycott Israel. These are the people that are going to be bringing us the Messiah. And of course, if you said bad things about their deity, that would be about the deity that they declare is the god of the planet. And you could be punishable by beheading. So with that said, I'll play a surprise clip and end this video. Rick Miracle reporting.
Continue his vicious treatment. You know, some people say that he's been tortured, and I don't think he was waterboarded, but living the way he's had to live for 6 years now, I mean, he has had a rough time, and I think he's been essentially in solitary confinement, you know, living in the embassy. But the Ecuadorians removed his status and kicked him out of the embassy. And can you believe it? The British police were right there. They couldn't wait. As a matter of fact, they didn't wait till he walked down the street. They just marched in and made sure they got him, and they arrested him. He's been convicted, I understand now, because of some charge made way back that he didn't show up under dire circumstances to a hearing. But he has suffered a lot. I think this is a real tragedy for all journalism, which means all the people who are trying to find the news. And I think he fits into the category that we've talked about so much, and that is that truth is treason.